Good day, everyone. My name is Judy Haddad. This is a continuation of my series, Hit by a Truck, my experience through trauma and into faith and purpose after I was hit by a truck and lost my only child. I am the owner of Orange Purple Passions, my healing LLC. I did have a lot of the videos that I filmed for that LLC on my personal page, and I appreciate all the love that you guys had for them, but I've now moved them to Orange Purple Passions YouTube page, and I have no love over there. So if you feel like giving me love over there, I'm gonna keep adding those videos back in to Orange Purple Passions, anything that is healing and work related. I'm also the founder and executive director of 5 Purple Oranges, my public charity, founded after the death of Elan, my son. So that, they also, 5 Purple Oranges. I don't do a lot on YouTube on there, but feel free to go to that page as well. 5, the number 5 Purple Oranges. So I wanted to, before I could move into my faith journey, which is one of the reasons I'm sharing all of this with you, I wanted you guys to know how far down I was. Like, the loss was hard enough. Definitely the loss of Elan was just, I mean, there's still some I'll come back to. Definitely the loss of any child is going to be rough. It's going to be very difficult. Understatement of the year. But for me, it was a combination of everything. Not only the loss of my child, but the way it affected things with my parents. Already things were bad with my parents. Like, they lost the life that they had expected when my dad had his brain injury, and a year before Elan was killed. And then when he had his surgery the week before Elan was killed, he lost a lot more of his brain and his cognitive ability, and so that affected my mom's future. And then the loss of Elan really affected the way they behaved in life. And then there's the loss of my physical abilities after being broken into, the loss of my, I want to say career, but at that point, I don't even think I was in a career. I did I was working in the field that I had chosen at one point in my life, but I was also doing what was the most expedient to the life that I created with Elan. So that was a difficult life too. So when the crash happened, things were going to change. I didn't know how. We didn't have a lot of money. My hours at work were such that I didn't know. He lost his ride to his school. I didn't know how I was going to get him to school and how I was going to pick him up in time for it to come home and make dinner. Because we lived about 45 minutes from the school. So I had to think about dinner, cello practice, because, and we did not, I met a lot of students in he did Suzuki, in his Suzuki book. They were great kids, but they would practice for, like, some of them not so much, but some of them that were very serious would practice, well over an hour a day. Now, Elan loved his cello, but he also needed sleep and had a life, and we were very lucky because we were in Montessori school. He didn't have homework, so it was getting home, getting cello done, getting dinner done, getting, the sleep he needed, all within, like, the constraints of, like, time and our financial burden, which was huge. And I felt terrible for him. I talked briefly in some previous videos about how my ex-husband never paid any child support. Well, it affected a lot of things. Like, if you have the freedom to, and we would go out to fast casual meals when we could, usually if Marco ended up paying and meeting us there. But to have that freedom of knowing that if you don't have time to cook, you can go pick up something. I remember one of his friends at one of the schools, and then moved to the other school, they had like Burger King Thursdays or something. like because of the work schedules, and we just didn't have that. We didn't have the financial resources to be able to do that as often as we needed to. And Alon loved to cook, but you know, shopping, we were on food stamps for quite a lot of the time, and we really didn't have the time to shop but once a week. And I don't know, like we weren't good at planning the meals either, and because who knows what was going on with my time at work and his time at school and how long cello's going to take. And you know, we weren't best at living that kind of traditional life. And to be honest, at the end of the day, after he went to bed super early, I think the latest his bedtime ever was like 7:30. But he got up super early, and he really loved his sleep, and he was a great kid when he got to sleep. So he was always a good sleeper, God bless him. So he would go to bed super early, and I was just then exhausted by that point. So I'm sure there's a lot of mothers. I wasn't probably at my best health either. I was under a lot of stress. And I was doing everything for Alon. So like Alon took up so much of my time. I was exhausted by the end of the night. I wasn't like I should have been doing like laundry and cleaning and picking our meals. And I think half the time I just like would do like a 10-minute yoga routine and go to bed. So I take a lot of the credit for our life being not the best organized life in the world. I mean, a lot of the blame, I guess. So when it came time to find my way back to the working world, as I said in one of the previous chapters, I interviewed, I stayed in the same vein with the informal education, working with children, and ended up with the JCC, working at their summer camp. I will say positives and negatives. The positive was, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself from a previous episode, but the positives were I was on my feet a lot, which was painful but good for my body. The way my injuries are, sitting is much worse. So the more I could move, the more I could work work on my joints. It was good for me. I was outside every day, which was nice. Just being in the outside is always lovely. And I was okay being with the children. I rediscovered my work ethic that not a lot of the people who worked there had. I can't blame them. They were all like teenagers. The negatives were, it was really not a choice for me. It was not a choice, and it wasn't going to lead to anything. So it wasn't a job. I wasn't going to get health insurance, which at that time I still needed. So by that time, I think what had happened, once we saw that my health insurance company wasn't going to pay anything, even though I kept paying into them, I did end up on Medicaid, and they did end up paying my second surgery, because then I had no money coming in whatsoever, no job. And the thing with the job, it was a contract position, and because of the way I lost time going up to Wisconsin to deal with some stuff for Alon and to deal with the criminal case, I didn't even get my full paycheck by the end of the summer. So there were positives, there were negatives. I discovered that I had been, since early in my career, I had been a manager quite a few years of my career, from after grad school through the loss of Alon. So not having that freedom, just being a cog in a bigger wheel, even though I was technically, I guess, the manager of my little area, I was working with a 19-year-old I think she was 22, who didn't believe I was her manager and was kept backbiting me. And then of course my immediate supervisor was, I don't know, at least 10 years younger than I was, and it was not the best fit for me. And there were many times it was hard being around the children. So probably not the best way to jump in. And also, by the time I actually physically started the work, most of the civil case had been decided. So I kind of knew that I was going to have enough money to buy a little time to figure things out. But I didn't then have that time because I went straight. I was like, no, I signed a contract. I'm going to go do this job. It's still a job. It's still money. Let's see where it leads. So what I think it led to is me feeling like this is not where I belong. I have a little bit of leeway now financially. I'm also completely in limbo because all I can think about is the criminal case. And I could not seem to move forward in life with that hanging over my head. There are probably people who can. There are probably people who can say, this is going to resolve itself. You're still working on it, but you need to figure yourself out. That was not me. And one of the interesting things that also hung over that is that I knew at some point there was going to be something that came out of the criminal case that was going to lead me down a different path. So I felt strongly like I fell into this job. I stayed in the same lane. I did not make a choice. I did not take the time to figure out, like, this was in many ways a gift. I don't want that gift. I want to return it. I want my son back. Please don't get me wrong. But it was in many ways a gift. Okay, this civil case is concluded, so you have a little bit of money. You can take this time and figure out what you want. But I also had the restrictions of, I had only ever wanted to have a child and be a mom. Like, I had loved my careers. But when I was a kid, I knew what I wanted. When I was a kid, I was like, you're gonna learn Spanish because this country's gonna have a lot of Spanish speaking people. And the area I lived was very cosmopolitan at the time. And then like lots and lots of different people from different countries. You're gonna learn Spanish, you're gonna become a paramedic. I don't know why I thought this is what I was gonna do when I was a kid, but that was my goal. So I started Spanish really, really young. And like knew. And then as I got older, I then thought I was gonna be an engineer. I was working, so when I was in high school, I was working in the library in the field that I ended up going into. And I was also working in engineering firms. Like I worked on heads-up displays for Tomcats at one point, F-14s, Navy fighter jets. So I loved that work and I loved the guys I was working with. But as I aged and as I made my way through school, like the library work kept pulling at me. I started working at libraries again, and that was where my heart was. And after college, I went directly to grad school, which was a big mistake in some ways. Got my MLS and started in library work. So in many ways, I made that choice. But once I had decided to do library work, it came upon me in my heart and soul that I just want to be a mom. Like, I just want to be a mom. I've had this connection with children since the time I can't even remember. Like, I had babysitted my whole life. I will be on an airplane, and if a kid's running up and down the aisle, I'm the person he chooses to stop and talk to. It's happened to me forever. I've been known as the baby whisperer. If you have a crying baby and you give me that baby, I've been known to calm that baby down. Some of you who know me as this like really sarcastic person, and maybe you don't see that nurturing, warm side of me. And in many ways, I think kids get it. Like, the thing that worked with Alon is I let him be himself. I gave him the discipline he needed when he needed it, because every kid needs structure and they need rules. They need to know, and that's how they know they're loved, to be honest. They need those rules, they need that structure. But I let him be who he needed to be, and when he wanted his snuggles, I was there for his snuggles. So it was just something, some people are like great at mothering their own children, but you would never think like, oh, that person's gonna be a great mom. Like, I was just always like, I had worked with children. I had worked in a couple different preschools. it was just something I knew how to do. When I was a librarian, I was working in the children's library, even though that's not how like my career in libraries actually started. I assumed I'd be going into academic work because I loved the work I did at Carnegie Mellon University. I was working in the reference department there, and it was actually a business and computer library, and like I loved that work, and I hate like all the numbers stuff I had to, the information I had to find. I don't even understand it, to be honest, but I loved finding it. So my mind works like that. I'm a good problem solver, but I always knew I was going to be a mom, and I was going to be a great mom. I just knew it. And like I'm just intuitively, I'm not trying to sound like, oh, I'm so great, but like intuitively I know how to mother a child. Like it's not, I didn't have to read the book. Like some people can't, you wish they would read more books or read some articles or take some classes. It was just something that I always knew I was going to do. So losing that and then having to go back in and think, oh, what are you going to do now, Judy? So I feel like I did not make that choice. I did not make a choice. When I went back to work, I didn't make a choice. I fell into work. I don't know if I could be a mom now because I've changed my life so much that to foster a child, to adopt a child, to have a child. I mean, I waited till I was super old to have Alon to begin with. I'm a different person, and I don't know how that would work in my life now. But in the entire time that I was waiting for the criminal case to progress and conclude, and for my life to sort of make sense, I did birth the charity. And it didn't start like a charity, but I knew I needed to do something. It wasn't just that there was so much love being shown to me, and I wanted that to manifest into something greater. It was just, I think maybe this was going to be my child. I don't think I saw it that way in the beginning. So in the beginning, I started from my hospital bed. I started with his scholarship fund at the Music Institute of Chicago. And then later we started a fund at his school for people who knew him there and felt more comfortable donating there. But like I just felt like I needed to do more. I started, and then again, I knew I was going to get some money coming from the civil case. So I started with a donors advised fund, thinking I can't do a foundation because I have no heirs. I have no, at that time, none of my siblings had children. A foundation is really a family thing, and you have a very specific purpose, and your purpose is going to feed like into, you're going to funnel your own money into this thing, and yeah, you're going to take donations or whatever, but your foundation is a very specific thing. And you'll see, you guys know I'm a Dateline junkie, so you'll see that often at the end of Dateline. Well, my daughter who was killed was really into swimming, so they started a swimming scholarship, or that kind of thing. I think at that time my mind was so like, I'm gonna have money, I wanna affect change, I wanna do good. I don't know if I knew how that was gonna happen. So I did start the Donors Advised Fund. So if people felt the need to give, they would give, and then I would find charities that made sense, that Alon would have, and I would feed into his scholarship funds, and then grow from there. I wasn't prepared to think big yet at that time, and I'm really super glad that I did eventually. I found a lawyer, and in talking to that lawyer, honed my thoughts on how to create a legacy for Alon. And what's interesting about that is part of me had a real hard time letting go of certain things I wanted to do in his name that wouldn't really fit into this sort of thing I wanted to create. but I also sort of wanted his name to live on. And I wanted people to know him and get to know him and learn who he was. And I had to let go of that. I had to let go of that. So I'm going to talk about the charity in a different chapter. I'm gonna say I want to get back into. There's like a year or two between where I landed in the fall of 2015 and when the charity was birthed officially. I think about a year. So I'm going to get back to that on another chapter. And I really appreciate you watching. Thanks.